Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, today we're really getting into it, looking at creative compromise through the lens of a 2012 sci-fi drama.
Yeah.
Diving deep into Alcatraz. Now, this was a show with, massive expectations. J.J. Abrams as executive producer, and a concept that just sounded incredible. Should have been a slam dunk, right? So our mission here is to figure out where that amazing premise, that initial momentum, just hit a wall. Specifically, the wall of network TV demands.
And you're right, that premise is, well, it's gold. The core idea, like our sources lay out, is back in 1963, 302 people, inmates and guards, the whole lot just vanished, completely gone from Alcatraz Island.
Vanished.
Yeah, and it was covered up. The official line was something like they were moved and conveniently lost in the system.
Conveniently lost. You got to love that phrasing. Such a tidy historical line.
Frankly.
But the real hook, the thing that grabs you, is the return. Fast forward 50 years to the show's present day, and these missing people, who are source calls some of the worst criminals America's ever seen, they start showing up again, one by one, back in San Francisco. And here's the kicker. They haven't aged today. They look exactly like they did in 1963.
Right. It immediately creates this massive, almost reality-bending mystery. So the show puts two huge questions right in front of you, the viewer. Where on earth were these 302 people for half a century? And why, after all that time, are they being sort of dropped back into the world now? That's supposed to be the engine driving everything.
Okay, so you've got this incredibly high-concept sci-fi idea that really demands, total commitment to a serialized mystery, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what happens instead? What happens when that kind of ambition runs smack into the network need for, weekly, solvable TV? Let's unpack that. The journey kicks off, like they always do, with the team that gets assembled to look into these impossible returns, these 50-year-old cold cases. And, this is apparently where the cracks start showing almost immediately. Our reviewer points out that the main characters felt like standard cutout characters.
Yeah, and that's kind of disheartening, isn't it? Because if you have a mystery this big, this strange, you'd hope the characters would be just as complex, just as interesting. But instead, we meet Rebecca Madsen, played by Sarah Jones, and she's the classic broken cop archetype, lost her partner, carries that guilt, needs to get her mojo back, as the source puts it, and she stumbles onto the first clue that sort of pulls her into this whole thing.
She's the perfect lead for a standard procedural, primed for that weekly dose of redemption. And who does she get paired with? Diego Soto, played by Jorge Garcia.
Right. It's almost like the show swapped one mysterious island, Lost, for another, Alcatraz, and brought along the guy who knows all the secrets. Only this time, he's selling comic books. Because Soto is the nerdy, insightful, and brilliant sidekick.
As that acquired architect.
He owns a comic shop, but crucially, he's also written books on Alcatraz. He's the expert. So they team up the gritty cop and the quirky historian brain.
Makes sense. But then their investigation immediately gets blocked by Emerson Hauser, Sam Neill's character, the enigmatic agent, this mysterious government guy who just appears and tries to basically intimidate Madsen off the case.
And Hauser, this character, he really just crystallizes the show's reliance on, lazy tropes. It's something the reviewer really flags. Think about it. If some super secret government agency wants to quash a sensitive investigation, why? Why always send this intimidating, sinister man who looks like he has something really big to hide?
Exactly. Why not send some, boring mid-level bureaucrat in a cheap suit? Someone who might actually maybe talk the cop down.
Right.
Instead, they send the guy who practically screams, "I am the conspiracy." It just immediately tells Madsen she's onto something huge. It feels like a failure of basic narrative logic just to create instant kind of shallow drama.
Yeah, precisely. And predictably, Hauser is quickly revealed to be running the secret government unit that knew about this, that's been waiting for these guys to come back. So despite trying to shut her down, she ends up sort of reluctantly bringing Madsen and Soto into his team. And bam, there's your core crime-fighting unit. And that's the moment, really, that the show locks itself into a certain path.
Yeah, and this is where our sources really hammer home that the potential, that initial spark was just squandered. The audience, remember, was definitely looking for another Lost-type show which slowly unfolds. People wanted that deep, unfolding mystery based on the disappearance.
They did. But the sources say the show made a critical pivot almost immediately.
Which was?
The pivot was away from being their mystery sci-fi drama, it seems set up to be, and straight into becoming a standard police procedural, a baddie of the week crime drama.
Right.
So the structure just became totally predictable. Okay, a criminal from 63 returns, he commits a new crime, our team hunts him down, and, they catch him just before the credits roll every week.
It really makes you wonder, though, if the network was so insistent on that rigid procedural format, why even start with the huge sci-fi premise? Why not just make it a show about a regular cold case unit or something?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's the core of the problem. When you have these standard cutout characters like the broken cop,
Yeah.
well, the easiest, safest way to generate weekly stories for them is to plug them into that standard case of the week format where they get their little redemption moments. And the central mystery, the actual point, you'd think, the why they disappeared, the where they were for 50 years, that got pushed to the side. It was just like a little snippet of information thrown in each week, almost an afterthought.
And our review points out that this lack of commitment, this choice, had immediate consequences for the show's structure, for the viewing experience.
Oh, absolutely. It basically gutted the tension. See, in a real serialized mystery, the tension builds over time, right? The stakes keep rising, the answers are hard won. But by defaulting to the procedural, the viewer always knew the team would get their guy by the end of the hour. So any real suspense about the weekly crime just evaporated. It turned this potentially mind-bending cosmic mystery into just a pretty routine cop show, albeit one with villains in vintage clothes.
We should probably step back for a second, though, and think about the context here. Because it's not just about one show making a creative misstep, is it?
Yeah.
It feels more like friction between creativity and the business model.
That's a good point.
I mean, why would a show from J.J. Abrams, a producer famous for Lost, for serialization, immediately fall back on the procedural formula?
Well, you have to remember the time. 2012, networks like Fox, they were still heavily focused on those weekly ratings, and maybe even more importantly, the long-term value of a show in syndication.
Syndication.
Yeah. Fully serialized shows like Lost, they're notoriously expensive to make. Plus, there's always the risk that viewers will get lost if they miss an episode and ratings might drop off. Procedurals, though, they're designed differently. Mostly self-contained episodes, easy for viewers to jump in anytime, and crucially, they make a lot more money in syndication because you can air the episodes in almost any order.
So they're safer.
Yeah.
More reliable financially.
Exactly. So even if the creative team, as the source suggests, conceived the series as something different, you can easily imagine the network pressure. Pressure to deliver something reliable, repeatable, something that fits that profitable procedural mold. The high concept just became the flavor on top, not the actual meal.
And the irony there is pretty stark, especially when you compare the, let's say, the plotting choices with the actual look and feel of the show.
Yeah.
Because visually, according to the review, the show was very impressive.
Yeah, it looked good.
Even with what was reportedly a modest budget per episode, the review says the on-screen results are very high. It was apparently very well put together in terms of editing, sound, and score. It had that professional sheen, that polish you'd expect from an Abrams production, right? Top-tier packaging.
Yeah.
But the actual substance inside that package was kind of generic. That must create a weird feeling for the viewer, that disconnect.
Oh, it definitely creates tension for the viewer.
Yeah.
And it clearly created enormous tension behind the scenes, too. Probably the strongest evidence that the show was pulled away from its original vision comes from that really significant behind-the-scenes detail our source highlights. The original showrunner was Elizabeth Sarnoff.
Now, that name rings a bell. She was heavily involved in Lost, wasn't she? And Deadwood, too, I think. Complex shows.
Exactly. Lost and Deadwood. She absolutely understood intricate plotting, long-form, serialized storytelling. That was her wheelhouse.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, our source notes that Sarnoff allegedly quit the show, walked away. And the reason. Reportedly, it was over this exact issue, the show's creative direction, its firm shift into that police procedural format.
Wow.
And the reviewer makes a really strong point here. Someone with that background, that track record with complex narratives, maybe she should have been listened to a bit more about the show's structure.
Yeah, you think.
Her leaving really signals a fundamental high-level disagreement about what the show should be. Should it prioritize the big mystery, or should it prioritize weekly closure?
It sounds like that was the moment the show really became this kind of tragedy of compromise. Like they hired the person who knew exactly how to build this amazing, complex maze.
Yes.
And then the network basically said, no, just draw us a straight line instead.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's probably no surprise that when this review was written, the show's future was hanging in the balance. It was uncertain. Fox hadn't renewed it yet.
Given the reviews pointing squarely at that structural compromise, that core problem, yeah, that uncertainty feels pretty justified. So, okay, let's wrap this up. What does this whole Alcatraz situation, this case study, really mean for us, for you listening? Feels like a textbook example, really. A brilliant sci-fi idea. 302 people vanish, reappear 50 years later, unchanged, getting boxed in, watered down by the rigid formulas of network TV.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway for you, the listener, has to be about the critical importance of structural commitment. It has to trump even flashy production. Because even if you have the best visuals, the slickest editing, the most mind-blowing hook imaginable, none of that can ultimately save a show if the execution, the week-to-week structure, defaults to the predictable baddie of the week formula, especially when the core premise was screaming out for a challenging, long-form mystery. The narrative ambition has to be matched by structural courage.
That courage just wasn't there, was it?
It seems not.
Which leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought for you to chew on, something to explore, maybe on your own time. What if Elizabeth Sarnoff's vision had won out? What if the network had shown that courage and the show had focused entirely obsessively on the why and the where of that 50-year disappearance? If it had become a genuine serialized hunt for answers, not just weekly captures, would that commitment have created the next Lost, the next genre-defining hit?
Or would the lack of that weekly closure, that neat resolution, have just alienated viewers anyway, maybe proving the network's cautious approach right all along?
Something to think about.